What's up, guys? It's Isaac here. It's Back Road Harley-Davidson with your pre-owned bike of the week. This 2012 Harley-Davidson Sportster 48. Love them or hate them, the Sportster 1200 is a fantastic motorcycle. Super fun to rip around and very easy to customize, especially if you're going for kind of that street bobber look and just kind of a good little street brawler. Advantage of the 48 is you have that small peanut tank, so that's kind of the tipping point for most folks on this bike, because it is a 2.2 gallon tank, so you are very limited on your range. But you do get that really nice look of that smaller tank. So I've seen some folks actually swap these out with a 3.3 or a little bit over 3 gallon tanks that you see on the Sportster or the Iron line. So you see those work out pretty well for some folks on these bikes, but they look fantastic, especially this one all blacked out with the 48 and the Harley-Davidson on it there. Another big thing on this bike is that front tire. This front tire might be the same size as that rear tire, because you're looking at this is a Michelin Harley-Davidson tire right here, and it is a 130/90 B16. And we go to the rear, 130/90 B16 over there, and then over here, Harley-Davidson Scorcher, Michelin, you're looking at a 150. I can't see it. Got to go to the other side. But then on this side, you're looking at a 150/80 B16. Pretty close to the same size. And it looks great. I mean, you've got just an aggressive stance on it. This one has Vance & Hines short shots. It looks like these have been powder coated afterwards. Most Sportster 1200s or most Sportsters, those are the pipes you're going to see on them. People love them. And they look good and they sound great, and they make the bike sound pretty rowdy. The 48s, they also come stock with forward control, so you're spread out a little bit more. Cool thing about the Sportsters is actually it is a rubber belt, so you don't have to worry about chain maintenance, that sort of thing, but actually the belt's on the exhaust side. So whereas on most of your Softails and your new sport line, like the Nightsters and your touring bikes, most of those bikes are going to be, they're going to have that belt on the left side with the primary. But on the right side, you're going to find this final drive rubber belt on the Sportsters, so it makes it a little bit easier to service them as well. If you have to service the drive belt, because that's not something that you really have to do that often. It's a very long interval between swapping drive belts out, unless you just get a rock to tear one up, which again is a pretty rare circumstance. But yeah, so then you've got your shocks, super easy to swap out too if you want the bike a little bit taller or slammed a little bit more. I think where it's sitting at right now helps this bike out the most. Oh yeah, see, look at that. Oh, Iron 883, I think, ripping by. This one is set up for a passenger, so looks like pretty comfortable and pretty grippy seat here for your rider, and then you've got a nice spot for your passenger and passenger foot pegs. Some of the other aftermarket features you're going to see is you do have all LED lighting up here on the front. You do have a aftermarket air intake, and then you have the Vance & Hines, and you have these taller bars and underturned mirrors, and it looks like LEDs, nope, not LEDs in the back, just your halogen bulb, side mounted license plate. But probably the biggest thing that's going to stand out on this bike, besides the tire and the tank, it's going to be this relocation kit. If you're probably familiar, you have your ignition coils up here on above this cylinder. Now look at how clean this looks. That is, look at all that room you got. So it really shows this motor off a lot better. It really makes it stand out more. Because the way you did that was actually moving the ignition coil to this side. So you still have an actual key here. It looks like it was just ran right here. Then your coils sit right there. So it looks really sharp, and it's very clean and still very easy to get to. I think this is one of the first 48s I've seen that actually still uses a key. The last couple years of the 48s, they actually went to the keyless ignition system like you see on the Softail, so all you have to do is flip that run switch. But I'll show you how to start it here in just a second, and we'll go ahead and ride it. All right, so here it is. It probably isn't everyone's favorite Sportster, but I like it. You know, this one, she ain't perfect, but she is ready to rip. So we're going to go, let's go see what it's got. So crank it up for you, let you hear what, where's my key? It's in my pocket. There we are. See, it is a 2012 XL 1200. There we go. All right. Fire it up. Oh yeah. It wouldn't hurt to sit on a charger for a little bit longer, but she's ready to go rock and roll. Cool. So it's Sportster. It's ready to rip. That's just the right amount of shake. I'll let you hear that exhaust. sounds good. Oh, this seat kind of feels like one of those, it's like not supposed to get too hot on you. There we go. Reverend, the old pastor of the Capital City Biker Church. This is a little bit different than the big old Street Glide Special I rode not too long ago. Oh, figure out where everything's at. There we go. That's it is Sportster 1200, ready to rock and roll. So, worst thing about this motorcycle right now. Is that we're about to get cleaned out. Jeez. Alright. Worst thing about this motorcycle is it does have is that my I was just gonna say this tag's like hitting my knee. Tag down here on the left. So that's the nice part about having exhaust, is that you can kind of, usually folks can hear you coming, but you can kind of give them a little, hello, I am right here, where are you going? Please do not hit me. That's a lot of dudes watching concrete pour. Yeah, here we are, Sportster 1200, ready to rip. Love Sportsters. So, a couple things to talk about on this motorcycle. A lot of things to talk about on this motorcycle. I like the bars. One of the reasons why you see bars like this over your traditional T-bars. One of the advantages to bars like this that you see a lot of folks do, or I guess not advantages, but the reasons that a lot of folks do these bars and leave that short riser is because of the speedometer. So on most of the Sportsters, you actually have that speedometer that is part of the top clamp for the bars. So it kind of has that fixed angle on it. So if you do like a super tall riser, then leave the top clamp as the speedometer, then it's like right here, which is kind of weird. I have seen some bikes where they actually do like a side mounted one down and like kind of clip it to the forks. Got mixed feelings on that though. Hadn't quite decided how I feel about that. But it doesn't matter what I think. It's your bike, could be your bike, and you can do whatever you want to with it. So, you know, I never checked if this thing had gas in it. I was too busy talking. Let's rip it. Not a ton of power, but it's so light, it'll feel like it. Kind of ease up a little bit. There was a tire on the road up here earlier. I gotta get over still. What is in this truck? Yard debris? So these do have a fuel light, so at least I hope. I'm pretty sure this one has a fuel light. So when you get low on fuel, guess what will happen? The fuel light will come on, I hope. Yeah, it's ripping down the highway. We're going 55. I need to go a little bit quicker. Let's see if I can get around these guys. Come on, folks. Yard debris on me the whole time. So one kind of cool thing about the Sportsters on the highway, I've ridden with a few folks that have been riding with a while that have Sportsters, the Sportster 1200s. And when you're, so me on a M8 Softail, I'm pushing a 107, 6 gear, easy cruising, but advantage and disadvantage to the Sportster is you don't have that 6 gear. I think there was like a kit you could put in, but I don't think a lot of folks saw the value in it. Oh, so when you're on the highway, you're ripping in 5th gear, so you're already a little bit higher up in that power band. So it's a little bit easier for you to just grab a handful of throttle and rip it. Whereas the M8, you know, I have to downshift to kind of get that, to get going that quick to get after them. But I mean, when you're on the big twin, it's you can catch up pretty good. But these things rip. These things are so much fun. They're just so light. They're V-twin power, everything great about those, and they rip, and they're so much fun. Those Vance and Hines sound good. It does have the fork mounted turn signals up there on the front. So the Sportsters are a lot of fun. Around town, around Raleigh, stuff like that, yeah, they get along just fine. They are fully, or I guess only air cooled, so there's no oil cooler, there's no coolant or anything like that. You got gas and you got oil. That's about it on this thing. So nothing too fancy. So I mean, it's sitting in a dead stop. You know, it's going to get a little bit hot, but it is a relatively smaller displacement, so it's not too bad. You don't have too much combustion that it's trying to counteract there. But again, it's fuel. This one's fuel. It is a 2012 and it is fuel injected, but there is minimal tech on it. So I think, like, you don't even have the button over here on the left to cycle through on the speedometer. I think the button's on the back of the speedometer. I'm gonna show you how this thing rips on this beautiful lake day here. Rowdy through here. And see, these things are so much fun to go ride up in the mountains. That big front tire, it's not bad. It feels, I feel planted, that's for sure. But it's still as small of a bike as it is. I mean, it still feels great to come around and come across on. So, it's a lot of fun on this bike. Maybe I'll get a red light here soon. I can show you on the Speedo. So yeah, now we're just easy cruising. You know, I'm just propped up on the Fords. Mid controls are nice, but yeah, sometimes it's nice, especially on a bike like this, you know, just stretch out on the Fords, go cruise around, easy going, wave to the folks, and whip this thing on around. Man, it wants to go rip. Sportsters, Harley-Davidson, let me back up. Harley-Davidsons by themselves are so customizable, but the Sportster's been around for so long that it's got so much you can do with it. I mean, you see on this bike, they did a coil relocation on it. You know, you can make this bike look exactly how you want to. You know, you can go throw another front end on it if you want. Oh, what? Is that a state trooper record? What? I've never seen one of those. I didn't know state troopers had their own records. Could you imagine? I mean, it looked like the State Department seal on. I mean, I guess it's just state owned, but I guess it's part of the Highway Patrol. Could you imagine? I'd be terrified if I got pulled over by, you know, put a light bar on the record truck, blue lights, you get pulled over, you're like, that's a big cop car. All right, you pull over, and then you realize it's a wrecker. You're like, okay, there is a 10 out of 10 chance my car is getting impounded if I get pulled over. But I mean, look at that. I mean, vertical integration. You got everything right. I don't think they're pulling people over with the wrecker, but just imagine, you've got that, and they're like, yeah, we want to impound this one, so just leave your car here, and we'll just go ahead and throw your car on the back of the lift. No problem. take it to the impound lot ourselves. Take it to the impound lot ourselves. Like, oh, we need to wait for a wrecker. It's like, nope, we got one. And then when your car breaks down, or your squad car breaks down, like I guess happened there, then they're good. That's wild. I'm just saying, the paint and the seals matched a little too well. See if they're still putting that line in. I can confuse them now. Did I tell you Sportster's rip? How about that? They're like, is that same guy? They're like, how many people have that shirt? I got whacked with a pole. Oh yeah, we're cruising on this thing today. I was just about to say, man, the suspension doesn't feel that bad. And then I proceeded to have my lungs put into my diaphragm. But to be fair, that was a pretty nasty bump. Braking's pretty good. It is a single rotor up on the front, so pretty basic. Yeah, these are great bikes for most about anyone. They're just kind of bulletproof, and they're pretty easy to get set up and, you know, make minor repairs if you need to. So, well, you saw the belt there. I mean, seems like a relatively simple thing to get swapped out on. Not too much labor time involved with that job compared to your M8 Softails, where you'll be pulling the whole primary off to get to. But yeah, nice easy cruise around town. Bars aren't too bad. I'd probably like a seat that locks me in a little bit better. And you know, it's Sportster, so it's got some shake. You know, you got some sport bike friends that are like, oh, all Harleys do is shake. Well, they probably rode a Sportster then, because these things do be jiggling. They got a little jiggle to them, but just the right amount of jiggle, you know? You don't want too much jiggle on it, but you also want a little bit of something to work with here. So, I mean, I'd say we got a little bit to work with. So, it's doing pretty well, I'd say. Yeah, so now we're doing a nice little around town, kind of through the school zone riding. So, go take your kids to school on this thing, make them the coolest student at the school if you want, and you, by default, become the coolest parent. Unless, of course, the teachers are like, oh, well, you shouldn't be endangering the student by making them ride the motorcycle, and it's like, they want to ride the motorcycle. I'm not gonna, it's like, well, then it's like, well, if you had seen the fuss this kid was causing at the house because I wasn't going to let them ride the motorcycle, then you would realize that this was the safer option for all of us. 48's, their most defining characteristics are the 2.2 gallon tank and the fat front tire. You see those two things, and I feel like there's a pretty good chance you're looking at one of these things. It's a nice amount of power, where, you know, you're not too worried about it. You're not too intimidated by it. But I mean, it's still enough to, you know, you should respect all of them, but it's still enough to be respectable. And you're not going to get, you know, kind of, you know, so many folks talk about like, oh, you know, I'm just going to get like this little moped, that's all I'm going to ride. And it's like, well, and they're like, oh, I'm never going to touch the highway. And it's like, well, you're gonna want to touch the highway at some point, and at some point you're probably gonna get turned around, and you're probably gonna end up on the highway. So having something that's not gonna let you get, have something that's gonna let you keep up with the traffic is, even if it is kind of like the top end of that bike, and you're, like I said, you're not gonna be on the highway very much. But having the capabilities to do that and go over 55 miles an hour it's going to be important. That's a pretty good thing to have in your motorcycle, I think. So that's the Sportster 1200, and it's also a good amount of power. You kind of grow with it too. So as you learn, as you get more experience, you can push this bike a little bit harder. Granted, I mean, I'm not saying that your level of skill is defined by how hard you can ride the bike, but you can demonstrate great control on this motorcycle. That's the biggest thing that folks look for, and what makes a good rider is control. Anyone can hit a throttle on 40, but how controlled are you with it? How can you can you turn the bike around? Can you ride this mountain road without too much intimidation? Understanding kind of how the curves work and riding through them smoothly. So smoothness and control, I think that's what I would probably look for the most. And those are two things that you can really, really fine tune and become a much better rider over time on a bike like this. It's not, not so underpowered that you get bored of it, but not so overpowered that you're scared of it. You don't want to go ride it. So, and it is a smaller tank, so it's not an advantage to that. Oh, believe it or not, I have an advantage to it. That's not just the aesthetics. It's less top heavy. So that's kind of I think that's one of the biggest downsides I've heard about people learning to ride on Sportsters, is that they feel a little bit top heavier, because it's we have an 09 Sportster 1200 custom that weighs pretty much just as much, might weigh a little bit more than the Pan America, and it's because it's such a solidly built motorcycle, which is cool, which is great, a great feature. But sometimes they feel a little bit top heavy, so it's just finding a bike that feels right to you there. So, but here we are, back at the dealership. So thank you for riding with us here at Tobacco Road Harley-Davidson. And in the meantime, we hope you ride safe, and we'll see you soon.